Hey everyone, welcome to podcast episode number 153. My name is Brendan Lowe, creator and founder of Jazz Piano School. Now, in this episode recently, I had a vocal student come up to me and ask me, Brendan, what do you use your shell voicings for? And I thought, wow, that's a great question. This would be a great podcast episode to do. So here we are. In this episode, I'm going to be showing you exactly what I use shell voicings for, because to this day, I just played a concert last night. I'm still using shell voicings a lot, all over the place. And any amazing, great jazz pianist you hear will be using shell voicings. So I'm going to show you what I use them for and exactly how to implement them into your playing. So don't forget to go to jazzpianoschool.com/podcast 153 to get the practice materials for your shell voicings to implement into your playing, okay? With that being said, let's dive right into this episode. All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Jazz Piano School podcast. This is episode number 153. My name is Brendan Lowe. I am your host, as always, and thank you so much for joining me. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about what shells are and how to effectively use them. What shells are and how to effectively use them. So I was playing, I forget what I was playing. I was playing somewhere, and I had someone, a vocal student, ask me, because they were doing a piano class, they said, Brendan, when do you use your shell voicings, right? And so, I thought about this and I was like, oh, it's a great question. I should do this for the podcast. So here we are. I'm going to be covering that. What exactly? And this is more for beginners, but it can definitely lead to a lot of advanced stuff. And I do use this in a lot of my playing. So, to this day, in this moment, I use shells a lot. And so it's not to say that once you learn them, you kind of just move on to other things. You're still going to use them a lot no matter what level you are. They're very, very important. So it's good to know like the true in-depth nature of the shell and how you can effectively use them throughout your entire career as a pianist. So go to jazzpianoschool.com/podcast 153 to get the practice materials on this, because they will be very, very helpful to you in the future. And also, I have another link for you. We are going to be releasing the beginner course very, very, very soon. I know I probably say that every week, but we are getting very, very close. And so we just have a couple of fixes to do. But go to jazzpianoschool.com/beginner launch, and you will get details. You can sign up for our email list if you're not currently on there already, and we will be emailing you details about the beginner launch. So that's the best way to get on the email list to hear about the details, because all of our relaunch stuff and our redesign of each individual level of the main course curriculum will be sent through email. That's really I'll give you guys the link on here too if you just want to go check it out when we do go live, but the best way will be to get on our email list and then get the details for the launch. So I think that's it. Let's get right into this episode. Here we go. So shells, right? Our shell voicing is going to be extremely important. So if we have an F7 chord, the shells, right, what people typically call a shell, is going to be the third and seven of the chord. Now, the reason they're called the shells is because they make up the quality of the chord, right? Without the shells, all I have is a fifth. Okay, so the shells determine the quality of my chord. If I change one of these notes, let's say I change the 7 to the E here, I've completely changed the entire quality of the chord. I now have an F major 7 instead of an F dominant 7. So the shells are extremely, extremely important, right? And the same thing if I change the A natural, the third, I now have a minor chord. So they're extremely, extremely important, right? And so like I said in the intro, this girl asked me, well, when and how do we use them? Well, I'm going to give you a couple different scenarios. The first way I use them is you're going to use them a lot for comping, right? So if I'm comping, and let's say I'm comping a blues, I love to use this low end register, right? This low end register down here. So when you get super low on the piano, it's too low. This is way too muddy, right? It just sounds like bah, right? That was pretty funny. So you don't want to use full voicings down here. What do you use, right? Ding, 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 ding. You're going to use your shell voicings, right? So I can use this. I can even use a shell down here. This is actually almost getting too low. This is off the camera here, but I mean, these still sound great. I would actually use this voicing, right? And if you want kind of that rich low end sound, I apologize because this is getting off the camera, but right? It's such a really, it's, I was just playing more of like a funk, funk style down here in this low end register, which is really cool, but you can also use jazz, right? And again, I moved up slightly because I was just voice leading, but again, you can stay down here in that low end register. So besides the low end register, I use shells in the middle and high end. I don't go too high, but probably around this area right here, but below middle C and around middle C for comping purposes. Right? So I'm just comping there with my shells. That's all I was doing. And I do that a lot, especially for bass players. It's a really cool effect if the bass player soloing. I just had a gig last night. I use this a lot, and I use my shells up here, right? If my bass player's comping, I'm going to use my shells in my left hand. This is another strategy, and maybe octaves in my right hand. This is over a blues. And again, it kind of sounds stupid right now just because I'm doing it with no bass soloist, but like this thin texture up here is great for bass players. You know why? Because you're not intruding on their range. If they want to solo up here, bass players usually not going to solo in this range up here, right? Any of this stuff here, it's like too high. I mean, unless you get a bass player going really, really high, and you just want to be careful about that. But for the most part, they're going to probably be solo in this range right here, probably all the way up to maybe here. And again, that's they might go past that, but just be careful of that. So you're not intruding on their texture, which is a really nice thing to do, to have your shells in your left hand here, and no matter what you're playing. Right? Really cool texture for bass soloing. So comping is one of the ways that I use shells a lot, right? So my right hand will be playing shells, my left hand will be playing bass notes. And especially and again, this was all in our singer accompaniment mastery specialty course. I'm using this thing called the switch, right? Which is switching between active rolls in my right hand and left hand. So if you'll notice, sometimes my right hand's giving a rhythm. Sometimes my left hand's doing a rhythm, right? As you see that. Right? So I'm switching back and forth between the active roll, but the main thing my right hand is using is shells for all of that. So shells are extremely, extremely important. Again, I use them for comping essentially the most down here and up here. The other ways you're going to use shells is for voicing purposes, obviously, and soloing. Anytime you're soloing, a lot of times you can just use shells at any moment, right? Now, obviously, you'll want to add in more extensions, different sorts of things, right, to your shells, but your shells will always be the foundation of your voice. And if you don't know your shells to every single chord, you're not going to be able to build your voices quickly and efficiently and add colors onto them, right? You should know your third and seventh for any chord. So if I said, what are the shells to your G minor 7? You should be able to play them immediately. What are your shells to your B flat major 7, right? You should be able to play your shells no matter what, because if you can't, then your left hand cannot build a solid voice to have a solo over. You need the third and the 7. Why? Because I told you in the beginning of the episode, they dictate the chord quality, right? So if you don't have the shells in, then essentially you're not playing the harmonies to the chord. You're playing a different harmony than what's written on the page, and that doesn't really make sense unless you're purposely doing it and you want to reharm, right? So if I were to play an A flat 7, you need to know your shells are, G flat and C. And then you can solo over, right? D minor. And so again, that just goes for soloing purposes. Now, when I'm soloing, my left hand a lot of the time is using shells, and especially in blues. And a bass player's walking here, right? If I'm playing with a group, I love using just my shells. Right? A bass player's walking, you just got to picture that bass player. Boom, 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 boom. Right? All I was doing in my left hand was shells. That's it. Just shells. It was creating the whole thing, right? It's such a beautiful, beautiful way to play jazz and use shells effectively. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you about before I let you go here is your shells, again, like I said, are the foundation to voicings. So you always want to start your voicing essentially with a shell, your shells, for a chord, unless you're kind of doing some funky stuff, right? Unless you're doing some funky stuff. But 99% of the time, I can give you this general rule, you will use both of your shells in your voicing. So if you were playing a C minor voicing, you will want to have your your 7 and your 3, in this case, your 3rd and your 7 in your voicing. So from here, I can stack on any color notes, any chord tones I want to create my voicing. It's a very, very powerful foundational starting block to build your voicing. So many people don't know how to build voicings, and so many people are trying to copy voicings or look at voicings, but you can always build your own voicings however you want at any time when you're playing. All you need to do is play your shells and then add on notes from the chord. So I could add my G and then add on any available extensions. And if you don't know what those are, then we do have podcast lessons on there, so go back and listen to that. But I could add my 9 on here. I could add my 11. Right? I could add my 11 in here and my 9 here. Right? That's a beautiful voicing. I could add my 13 in there if I wanted. I would have to move my shell, or I'd have to do this. That's a beautiful chord. And I'm playing 3, 11, 5, 13. Listen to this sound. I mean, when you get to a certain point, you want to think about imagery, right? And feelings and emotions. So what does this create for you? This sound, listen to that. What does that bring up for you? What type of emotions, right? To me, it's more like a dreamy, like a child, kind of it makes me think of when I was a kid and I would dream about being certain things or doing certain things in life. Now, if I didn't have this voicing here, listen to what it sounds like. It doesn't really sound like anything. I mean, it just sounds like diatonic movement, but the voicing is what actually creates the atmosphere and sound. So many people forget that. So many people are focused on their right hand improvisation, but it's really the voicing that upholds what you're doing in your right hand. So without the voicing, it just sounds like nothing. That sounds kind of cool, but now with the voicing, right? It's so powerful and so rich and so beautiful. So that's why shells will be so important. And again, in your left hand, once you build your shells, for example, F7, you can start to add on anything you want, chord tones or extensions. So I can add on my flat 9, I can add on my natural 13 into my voicing. Now I have this voicing that I just built. I mean, this is a very common voicing, right? But if you don't know how to build voicings, quickly to you right now, you're going to be like, wow, that's awesome. And that's great. That's what I'm shooting for. I want you to have that epiphany, right? Or I can switch my 13 to my flat 13. I can also add my sharp 11 in there. So I could play this. Listen to that sound. I mean, that's gorgeous, right?
amazing. And I mean, I've played this voicing before. I know the sound of this, but like just experimenting, you're going to come up with so many amazing voicings just starting from your shells and playing it around. And remember, if I take my shells out of this, it's going to sound like this. You're not going to hear the chord quality of that F7 because remember, the third is going to dictate the major or the minor quality of the sound, right? Or the sus quality. The 7 is going to dictate the dominant quality or major 7, right, of the sound as well. So those are two very important notes. So hopefully that was very kind of eye-opening for you. We do have some exercises. Again, go to jazzpianoschool.com/podcast 153 to get the exercises and practice materials for including your shells and things like that and some of the stuff I've talked about. But enjoy that, implement it into your playing, and hope you guys enjoyed that episode.
All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I hope it shed some light on how to use shell voicings. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We release new podcast lessons every single week, completely free. We also release new licks of the week every single Monday on our channel as well. And if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them down below and we'll get back to you. And again, don't forget to go to jazzpianoschool.com/podcast 153 to get your practice materials. Now, if you're looking to take the next step in your jazz piano education, or you just want more free education, definitely go to our website, our main website, jazzpianoschool.com, and you can get everything you're looking for on Jazz Piano School. I'll see you in the next episode, and as always, happy practicing.